like a hypothetical situation in the beginning of a paper, kind of like an introduction type thing, and you use you, the you.
Second person you?
Right, but then once your hypothetical situation's over and you start explaining things and you take out the you, is that okay? Or, I mean, if it's a...
I think it would be. I'd want to see it to see exactly what you're talking about. When you're showing an example, it's not within the same context of what you're really writing on your own. You see, you find yourself walking into the office one day, this happens, blah, 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 blah. Then you drop down and say, what really happened to John here was, now you're in third person, I think that's fine. Is that the same thing you're talking about? Maybe. You said if you give an example.
Well, it would be like, imagine this and that happened, and you kind of do a little story or whatever to kind of get the reader involved, and then you ask kind of, or reiterate the prompt, kind of, how would you go about solving this?
Good.
And then kind of state kind of how, back up your...
I think you're into a little bit of a gray area, because some people will like that, some people may have an objection to it. Personally, I don't find any problem with that at all. You will notice we don't require MLA or APA or any particular style. What we're really interested in is, did you communicate effectively? And so, to me, that example and then go into third person, super. Okay? Anything else? What else going on? Have you done any reading in the books yet? Mm-hmm. What kind of topics are you talking about?
Management theory.
Say again?
Management theory.
Management theory. What kind of management theory?
Historical versus conventional, or historical versus...
What can you tell me about Frederick Taylor? Anybody? Henri Fayol. Douglas McGregor.
Taylor.
Abraham Maslow.
I was going to say,
Hierarchy of
believe that
needs.
if you up your production, then that your profits will increase as well. And he had a whole different theory about it. I have them all listed.
Taylor was all into getting things done the most efficient manner, even in the very movements of your body in a physical activity. Shoveling coal. There's a proper way to hold the shovel. There's a proper size for the shovel. Taking a step further, there's a proper size of the shovel compared to the person. There should be a certain place where the coal is located next to the furnace. And therefore your movements will be minimized, et cetera, et cetera. Really into that kind of stuff. I'd like to work for somebody like that.
Well, wasn't that the Lillian and Frank Gilbreth, the couple who minimized?
They got into the same stuff, yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah. Have you read McGregor? Anybody? I don't recall if he occurs in there or not. Where he is annoyed. Theory X, Theory Y?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me what a Theory X manager is.
Someone who views their employees in the best light, they have a positive expectation of
Theory
them.
X.
Theory, I might have to be confused. Okay, well, Theory X, the manager kind of expects their employee to fail. They're expecting the worst case scenario, and that's how they approach their management style.
All about expectations, right? Just like we judge one another the first time we meet and set expectations of what's going to happen. A Theory X manager makes the assumption that you're here, but you would rather be anywhere else. You're going to do the minimum amount of work necessary to get through the day. And the only way to get any worthwhile effort out of you is to constantly supervise, criticize, and otherwise monitor you. They look over your shoulder. What do we call someone who's constantly monitoring everything you do?
Micromanager.
Micromanager. Okay? What happens as a result of that management approach?
The employee doesn't trust themselves.
A lot of things. What happens to your best employees? They go find another damn job. Okay? What happens to your worst employees? They get aggravated and start trying to find some way to undermine you, to sabotage your efforts. Okay? And yet, frequently, people who are Theory X managers get a reputation as real hard-noses, and that's the guy I want in charge of my project. What happens to that person is he moves up into levels of greater responsibility. He will self-destruct, or his subordinates will help him self-destruct. He loses it. Why would anybody revert to a Theory X approach with their employees?
Maybe they've had a poor
They don't have
experience
confidence
with
in themselves.
employees who they've had.
If you've had an experience working in an environment where employees were of that character, where they didn't really do much, you take that as the norm. If that was the way you were supervised from the beginning, you may take that as the norm. You got to be a hard-nosed person in order to make these people work. Why else might you choose that?
The personality.
Many times a function of your personality, but there's something behind that.
That's the way you
You
would
lack confidence as a manager.
It's because you don't want to have to take the effort that it takes to manage people. You want to just put stuff out and have it done. If it's not done, hit them over the head.
What do they think that is the way to manage a person? So
Say again?
what do they feel that is the way to manage it? That they're not taking the step to be a good manager. They may think that is a good manager.
Interesting question. In a poorly run company, they may progress up. You'll see that company is characterized typically by very high turnover and lots of personnel problems. Okay, tardiness, absenteeism, sabotage at work, etc. If they're in a good company, they won't make it past the next promotion. They'll be identified fairly quickly. And this is kind of an underlying rule of thumb out there too, because the economy is beginning to heal somewhat. Is that you and I want to be doing job interviews and picking career tracks and picking employers with a view towards, do I want to be here? Not, oh, I need the job, right? And if you find yourself in a company that's poorly run, that tends to reward that Theory X approach, that abuse of employees, that denigratory attitude, and you don't want to be there, what are your options? What are you going to do? You got yourself a nice $45,000 a year job, you just bought a house and a car, the wife's pregnant, and now you're in this job you hate. What are you going to do? Look for a new one. How fast will that happen?
Well, the economy's going up. Could be pretty fast.
Well, you've been in this job for 3 months, and now you're over here in my company wanting a job.
Now, is this the negative manager, or
Yeah.
this is the?
No, you're a good person. You're a good manager, but you find yourself in this company where suddenly the culture and the ethos is just really negative and punitive.
Well, you try to
Build
find
yourself a good reputation and then
One of your assignments is on networking. You will start networking effective now so that more and more people out there know what you can do. So that the first time you get your first job, the second thing you do is start looking for your next job. You maintain your contacts and your network so that if necessary, you can put the word out that you're looking. What's a headhunter?
person who does it.
A professional job searcher. Goes around typically within a career field and identifies people and says, if you're unhappy with where you're working, here's my card, let me know, because I put people in jobs when they become open. My son's a mechanical engineer project manager. He's got 4 headhunters that he knows very well by first name. He's got options anytime he needs to. That's what's got to happen. Okay? So if you're going to be in a negative environment like that, be sensitive to it, be able to identify it if you can, but also know that if you get into it and you don't like it, you have done the homework necessary, that you're not locked into it for the next 4 and 5 and 6 years. What's a Theory Y manager? Has positive expectations. Thinks that all of you are here because you want to be and that you'll do the very best job you can. And my job then as your manager is basically to give you the resources you need to help you do that. Good idea, bad idea?
Good. If you want to keep valuable employees.
As long as you hire the right people.
Right.
What if you didn't hire them? You just came in with that attitude.
Fire.
There are going to be people out there, and we've used the term called Satisficers, who do just enough to get by. You will be letting them get by with very little with that attitude. You have got to hold them accountable in some way. It's the how you hold them accountable that makes a difference in whether you're going to be successful or not. Theory Y.
Quick question, can you make an X or Y? I know a Y can go to an X.
I hate to say this, but in my experience, Jimmy, yours is broader than mine, I've not been real successful at seeing that happen.
Okay.
Not even with training.
Jimmy?
Hmm?
I want to hear this answer for a reason.
I don't think that you can. It's ingrained in the personality, and as someone said earlier, at some point, they've had success with that, and they assume that that's the model that's going to make them successful wherever they may go. Eventually, it catches up with them. As Professor Strickland was saying, the people who work for them will undermine them, or they'll run into that superior manager who recognizes it for what it is, and that it's not doing things to make that company successful, and they end up going their way, so to speak.
Now, having said that, there are very, very successful leaders and managers who become a Theory X when the conditions merit,
Right.
but don't operate in that environment as a norm. Which now allows me to introduce what we're going to do 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to do the DISC personality profile, which is going to take a close look at that sort of issue. If you can be here, please do. Those of you that aren't here, please, 2 weeks from tonight, please make it to class if you can, so we can administer that profile, everybody can go through it together, and you can interpret your results very quickly right there. Okay? I'm going to ask you each to bring $2 to help pay for that profile. I printed them at my own expense. Okay? But I think you'll find that profile is, anybody here familiar with Myers-Briggs type indicator? This is similar to Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs has 16 different types. That's pretty tough to remember what I am, much less figure out what you are. This has 4. Very quickly done, easy to identify, and then look how 2 of them blended together. That's the kind of person you might be, the manager you might be. I've been using it for 20 years now. It's the most useful, it's not a complete statement of anybody, but it's one of the most useful ways to begin to organize behaviors and groups and learn maybe the better approaches to use. And you can go into one mode temporarily and back out. At least the best leaders I've known have been very, very capable of being Theory X leaders. But they don't live there. They go there in times of stress and emergencies, they get it done, resolved, and they go back to norm. And then you learn to trust that Theory X. Yes, ma'am.
I have to start by saying I have not checked my email today to see if I've had a response from you about
That makes
the
2 of us.
textbooks in the on reserve in the library.
I don't know if there's one. There was one over there. I don't know if it's there now, and if it's not, I'll round another one up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope it's still there.
I took a management class by Dr. Stevenson.
Yeah.
And in that class, it was said that a good manager, if there was something that was going on with your work in particular, that he would not address you, he or she will not address you in front of the crowd to embarrass you, with coworker to coworker. They'll pull you aside into their office. This is what's going on. This is what I need you to do. I have an example of a manager right now where I work at that if something is going on with somebody else in their work, in their section that they got pushed off to work on, they got pulled over to, after the meeting with everyone and get talked to about it. Me being the new employee, the youngest person in the organization, all my stuff is out on the table for everybody to filter through. What manager is that?
I'm not completely sure I follow.
Now, as an employee and me knowing what a good manager is, I'm like, You talk to me after. Don't put myself out here.
Don't humiliate me.
Don't humiliate me because I still have a relationship with all the rest of my employees. So if, let's say you take James and you put him with Jim, he's not going to trust me because obviously James doesn't do his work. You're messing it up. You're messing me up. I don't have a good relationship with everybody else now because I don't do my work. Because you got my stuff out there now. Instead of pulling me aside and was like, one-on-one, hey, this is what's going on. What can you do to fix it? Or this is what I'm going to tell you as your manager to fix it.
There's one way to look at it. I can't remember exactly, but basically you have a skill level, and it sounds like you're the new person, so your skill level would be lower than those folks who've been there a long time. But you look at the person's skill level, and you also look at their ability to relate, their attitude, and that kind of thing. And depending upon the situation, You know, if you have a person who has a low skill level but a great attitude, you should treat that person as you would everyone else. It sounds to me that this person is assuming that because you're new, that one, that you don't have the skill level, but it may not be taken into consideration what your attitude or that kind of thing is. It sounds that way, but I'm just not sure.
So to not step on toes, so I'm trying to calm down
Sure.
with being like,
Okay, general rule. Praise publicly, criticize privately.
Yeah.
Right? Second general rule. You ever heard of Mao Zedong? Mao Zedong? Who was Mao Zedong?
He was a politician in China.
He was the George Washington of China. He led the Chinese, for the most part, against the Japanese, and then drove the nationalist Chinese out of the country to Taiwan and set up the People's Republic of China. He has a little book on guerrilla warfare, and he has a statement in there at one point. It says, to teach 1,000, shoot 1. Shoot 1, teach 1,000. In other words, take somebody and make an example out of them, and everybody else will go, oh, damn. It sounds like maybe this person may be trying to do that. Occasionally as a manager. Rarely, but occasionally, that may be appropriate. Okay? Particularly when your group is close-knit and trust each other, you can criticize somebody, but they know that they're still accepted and valued. The thing you've just described sounds to me like a manager who doesn't know any better. If he's publicly humiliating and criticizing you in front of all those other folks, he doesn't know any better.
Even that person who has the low skill level and the bad attitude, you don't do it publicly and humiliate. That makes sense.
If I'm a drill sergeant in the Army and I've got a platoon of 40 guys, I'm going to humiliate every man I can, because that's part of the process of tearing them down before you build them back. You scare the hell out of a lot of people that way by just torturing a few. Not a good management technique. Okay? Have you read about Maslow?
Yes.
Anybody remember anything about Maslow?
He developed the hierarchy of needs.
The hierarchy of needs. What was the hierarchy of needs?
Basically described what needs people need fulfilled in what order, starting with physiological needs, and it goes all the way up to self-actualization.
Physiological needs, followed by safety,
Self-esteem, or
followed by,
social.
I'm going to say peer acceptance or social, followed by ego, followed by self-actualization. Okay? And Maslow says we all have these 5 levels of need, and our behavior at any point in time is triggered by the lowest level need that is not being met. Physiological needs include, for example, the hunger or thirst. If you have a child coming to school in the morning who has not had breakfast, that's the need that is triggering his behavior. No wonder he doesn't pay attention in class. Okay? Safety can mean physical safety. It can also mean emotional safety. If you are worried about your physical or emotional well-being, security, and safety, that tends to occupy your mind, and you're not able to focus on other things out there. The need to belong, to be part of a group. And this is why we're talking about teams and becoming affiliated with, engaging with people is necessary for most all of us. Not everyone, but all of us to a certain degree need to belong to some kind of group, whether it's your bowling team or your buddy that you play golf with or whatever. The need to belong, which says, we think you're okay. We all want to be told by somebody else we're okay. Once we finish satisfying that need, then we want to tell ourselves we're okay. How do we do that? We drive a Corvette. Okay? We buy a big house. We buy fancy clothes. And if that's not being satisfied, your lack of self-confidence and such is what tends to occupy your thoughts and your motivations. If you can get the first 4 satisfied, then you can move on to this one up here, which he is a little vague in explaining at times, but it's basically when you're doing things that make you feel the world is right and what you're doing is right. It's when you truly enjoy what you're doing, when you're at peace with the world in a sense. And it's there you find the greatest creativity, highest levels of energy, what we call lots of discretionary effort, people who put in more work than they need to because this is what makes them feel right. So if you've got behavioral problems in your work environment, this is just one more model to look at and say, what's going on here? What's bothering? What's triggering this? If you have a work environment where people are constantly being criticized in public, what's going on here? Their egos are being destroyed. No wonder they're not focusing on the rest of the job.
You worry about the safety of your job.
That too. That too. Yeah.
For safety, for like, there's physical safety, and then, safety, the other one, it's kind of...
Emotional.
Yeah. It's kind of, I don't know how you would deal with that if you have an employee who's kind of distracted and you might think that their emotional safety is at risk. How far can you go without going too far to kind of resolve that problem?
That's where, back to a point we made the first night, when you get a new job in a new organization, one of the first things they're going to give you is the company policy manual. And you better read that page to page, cover to cover, letter by letter. Somewhere in there, ideally, not always, ideally, there's going to be what to do if you think you have an employee who is undergoing some emotional stress or concerns. And typically you refer them to either someone within the company or an outside consultant or contractor for some counseling or therapy or just some talking.
So what would you do if you were in a smaller organization, a small business, maybe a mom and pop place where you're...
Typically, A, they ignore it. And B, when they finally try to handle it, they really don't know what they're doing. Sometimes they're successful, many times they're not. It's a very difficult area and a very litigious area. You get yourself into a lot of financial and legal problems by trying to do things you really don't know what you're doing.
There's a concept called management by walking around. Anyone heard that? Basically what it involves is, as a manager, rather than sitting in your nice corner office with the plush leather chair, you're out on the floor, you're walking around, hey, how you doing? You're getting to know people on a level other than just their machine or they're producing widgets for you and that kind of thing. That way you have a good feel for when things are not normal. And then you can develop a course of action based on that. But you got to get to know the folks first, and that's really the key to it. Because typically what happens is those issues have gotten far down the road before people even know that there are issues, and it begins to snowball and that kind of thing.
I'm going to do something right now. I want you to tell me what it means. Okay? You ready? And no, I'm not stripping. But
You're getting down to business.
You're gonna get your hands dirty.
what am I telling you? What's my body language telling you?
You're gonna get your hands dirty. You're gonna be
Make something happen.
comfortable with that you're approachable.
Who said that?
Want the jacket on?
That I am approachable. That let's take our hierarchical status here and remove it. And let's get down face to face, people to people. Let's talk about what's going on. Okay? Think about body language and how you can convey that. One of the toughest tasks out there is getting people to trust you and engage with you. And when you can practice that management by wandering around and you get to know people by first name, you get to know what's going on in their lives, you're gradually building that trust.
See, I was always taught when you get down like that,
Hmm?
you're gonna get your behind toe up.
Been there. I'm hoping that we're working in an environment where that's not the case. You'll know, we're going back to what's going to happen in 2 weeks. With me, you'll know if you're in trouble. Because I'm going to talk to you very softly, very slowly. You'll have your full attention. Turn off transmit, put it on listen, and listen very carefully. And the softer my voice gets, the angrier I am. That's my personality style. Other people get angry and bang, they just scream and run around and shout. That's the way my father was. And when his voice got quiet, he didn't have to roll up his sleeves.
That's how my father was.
Yeah. we have our own languages to do that, but we can also use body language to convey a message. We want to be comfortable. And sometimes we have to figure out what that person means. Okay, yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about management, are you talking about a certain level management or just management in general? I mean, there's like manager of fast food, there's office managers, so what manager level are you talking about?
Personally, well, Jim, you take that one first. Go ahead.
I think these concepts apply across the board.
Any manager.
Sure. Depending upon the level you are, financial decisions and those kinds of things may be more complex and so forth, but the kinds of things that we're talking about clearly apply across the board. And no matter what industry, as a matter of fact.
I've come from being an Army lieutenant and a captain, managing soldiers, to managing a kid's soccer team, a girls' soccer, high school soccer team, a taxidermy business, multiple different groups. And to me, it's 90%, it's the same stuff. You've got to know how to do it. And it's how to work with people.
Now, I know that in reality, that's not always the case. People will say, well, in this business, this is the way it is, and this, that kind of thing. But I would be willing to bet that those are the kind of industries where they have high turnover. Or if they don't have high turnover, then the employees are miserable. Yeah.
We use the term span of control. How many people can you adequately supervise at one time? Your span of control. What do you suppose the number is? 5. Subtle body language, you pick 5? It varies with the task that you've got to do. If everybody's doing the same thing on an assembly line, you can probably supervise 25 or 50 of them. If they're doing very complex tasks, probably 3 or 4. So there's some variation. But as a general rule, in most organizations, when your span of control exceeds 7, maybe 8, you've got too much to do, and you need to delegate, departmentalize, appoint assistant leaders or whatever. Too often what we find is the manager who is afraid to give up control, and as the organization grows, takes on more responsibilities, refuses to delegate, tries to manage 21 people, and then nothing gets done.
Well, I read something that the times manager or supervisor that did what you said, just walked around and made sure everybody was doing their job and getting to know them is over. That managers have and one of them have full days worth of their own work, plus trying to manage everybody else to make sure that their job is getting done.
There's been a lot of that going, particularly through the recession, when we have scaled back on payrolls, and we've asked everybody to do more because we're firing so many of the people we can't afford. And that is absolutely true for the past 7 or 8 years. Okay? I think as the economy heals, the better companies are going to recognize that, in fact, that kind of slack in your schedule and not giving you 40 hours of continuous work every week is going to make you a more effective manager. But once again, if you work in a company that doesn't believe that, I think maybe you want to examine where you're working.
Or examine your job description.
If you can in any way influence it, yes. Sir?
Still, I think that, going on what you say, it's still a choice of individual managers when it comes to whether or not you're going to practice that style. I understand about the economy having a certain effect on it, but a lot of people will use those kinds of things as managers as an excuse to be lazy. We have a term in the company that I work for, we call it executivitis, and it can happen on multiple different levels, whether it's a line manager, a store manager, or whatever. When they get to that point, they forget what it was that got them there by being that effective walk-around involved type of manager, and all of a sudden they think, because, all right, I got a new position now, those rules don't apply to me anymore. So they can manage differently.
I think
we see it all the way up at the levels that I'm at.
There's a very good counterpoint to what I just said. You're right. And remember, what is discretionary effort?
Above and beyond.
Effort beyond what is necessary. The good manager shows a lot of discretionary effort and spends the extra time. I'm going to take an hour off today to go out and visit the plant over there and talk to the people, and I'll come back and work till 7 tonight to make up for what I missed. And hopefully you're recognized for that. Sir?
I just had something to add to what she was saying. A lot of companies make the managers now be the accountant, be the person that has to deal with the things that the regular managers can't deal with. So they can't walk around, and the times that you do see the manager, they're in a bad mood because now they have to stop what they're doing and deal with what you can't help, what you can't do, and you need them for. So there's a lot of companies putting more things on managers. You have to do conference call, which take up your lunchtime. So now you have to sit here and eat lunch while you're on the phone. And plus with that, you have emails you have to count with every day, things you have to turn in. It's a lot of stuff for managers now. So no, you don't see the walk around manager a lot now. And when you do see them, it's a bad thing.
I'm just going to tell you that as the economy heals, you should have more latitude, and in the company that doesn't allow you that latitude to wander around to some degree, to control your own schedule, personal advice, start looking around. Make yourself some good contacts with some headhunters and find yourself another company. Because there are good companies, well run out there, who are what we would call enlightened, and there are a lot of others that just work day to day with really no sense of the future. And if you don't manage your career and pick your employers wisely, you get trapped into those conditions for the rest of your working career. I've known too many people that were there and bitter, very bitter.
Do you think there's not a set time or number of years you work for a company and move on, or should you're happy you stay, or you're just continuously
15, 20
looking
years
to
ago?
move up?
15, 20 years ago, they would have told you move every 3 to 5 years and expect a 10 to 20% pay increase every time you move. Okay? Those days are over. I think it's going to be part of the culture of the company to determine, am I going to get ahead by staying here and putting in the hours? Am I going to be recognized? And are the positions going to open? And if the answer is no, then be ready to move. Start making your contacts and getting out there. Sir?
My question that I've got is, it seems to be a fine line, and I'm in it right now with the career field that I'm jumping into. I've got a small agency that I've got a job with, essentially, and I've just been approached by, in my opinion, the later on agency that's got more lateral and horizontal movement, but right now their employees are disgruntled because of the management situation they have going on. And it seems kind of like it's a hard dance to make, not wanting to burn the bridge there, but at the same time, if the position I'm going into is miserable, then it almost seems like, it's a strange juggle to try and work with as a new employee coming in, So, I mean, like feedback from you guys, what do you think?
Yeah, it's
tough.
a juggle.
It's tough.
Personally, I would, this is me, I'm not going to go into a situation where I know up front I'm going to be miserable.
Right.
There's not enough money in the world, there's not enough anything else. That's me. Remember the hierarchy of need. I mean, if you're in a situation where you have 5 or 6 kids and you need a whole bunch more money, you might make that jump, But me personally, I just wouldn't make that leap.
I couldn't agree more. How am I going to be as good as I can be if I'm in a job that has got me nailed down into this limited sphere of activity in a miserable environment? That's not, it's bad for the company, but I'm not going to let it drag me down too. Frankly, that's why I resigned from the Army.
I mean, even if you talked about the lateral movement and those kind of the possibilities of them, but suppose the environment is such that they don't give you the opportunity to test that movement within the organization. So,
I was going to say, you can't wait for change to happen all the time, because the change may never come. And I'm actually seeing that happen this year, and
Well, let's introduce another term for a moment. And there's a variety of terms to describe this. My term for it is a Godfather. In every reasonable sized organization, 50 up maybe, you at some point early on in your tenure with that organization need to cultivate a relationship with one or two people further up the food chain that you can come in on a more or less casual or informal or unstructured basis and ask for advice. That you can say, Mr. Lewis, I've heard a lot of good things about you, and I'm interested in making a career with this company, but I've always been told I should go up and talk to some of my superiors and get to know from them in a more indirect, informal way what I should be doing here. Anything like that where you can develop that relationship so that then you can go in and maybe get a gist of how's the company growing? Is a job coming open anytime soon? Oh, gee, I see 3 vice presidents resigned last year. He may not tell you all the details, but he may have some casual comment indicating that, there's a bit of a shakeup going on. And that could be good, could be bad. But if you are cultivating that hero or godfather or whatever you want to call it, 1 or 2 or 3, and some of them not even within the same company. Some of them just mentors, if you like, from the outside world. I think they give you better perspectives. If you get the right relationship, they will keep you informed, give you feedback on you're doing good, you're doing bad. Too often what I've seen is many day-to-day managers don't give you any feedback. They wait until the annual evaluation, they pull out this form and show it to you, and it's good or it's bad, but if it's bad, you look at it and you say, why the hell didn't you tell me something about this before? Because why do you suppose that happens? Because managers too often don't have any courage. They don't have the courage to sit down and say, you screwed this up. Here's what you did wrong. Don't do this again. Do it this way next time. And the second time, we sit down and say, if this happens again, you're gone. Well, at least you heard about it before the evaluation.
Right, there's not supposed to be any surprise in the evaluation.
Yeah, I call it sandbagging. Waiting on somebody and waiting on them, and then dropping the whole bottom out on them. Not fair at all.
Yeah.
But because so many people are uncomfortable with those uncomfortable issues, those confrontations sometimes, they avoid it at every effort. Don't let that happen.
And there's times where you have to force that confrontation to happen because you feel like you're not growing.
Well, and then you're back to this dance. If I go to my boss and say, look, I need some feedback, and he gets offended by your attitude, your tone, your expression, or just his basic lack of guts, you may find yourself in a difficult position. But is that where you want to work? I don't think so. So I think network is one of the most important things you can do. Keep your options open from day one. What else? I think it's about time to wind down. I hope you got something out of class tonight. I promise you you'll get something out of class in 2 weeks. Anything else? Anything? Jim? Peace?